All right, everyone, we're back here at the Digital Currency Summit with another amazing guest, one of my favorite people to talk to in the whole space, Matt Cutler from Blocknative. Welcome back. How you doing?
Doing great. Great to be back. Great to see you. Saw you for the first time in person just a week and a half ago at EthDenver, which was amazing. And great to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was great to run into you. And let's talk about EthDenver because that was a very special event. It was even larger than Bitcoin Miami was last year in terms of attendance. One of the Uber drivers told me that he's never seen so many people come to this city for one event in his entire life.
Wow.
And it was a crypto event.
Yep.
And every restaurant I was sitting in, I'm listening to conversations about smart contracts and user experience and governance models, not sports, not politics, not prices of tokens, not even like personal conversations, just all about building Web3. So that was tremendous for me. But that was also my very first EthDenver experience. You're a veteran of that event. Can you tell us what it was like for you this year compared to last?
So it was great to be there, and I'm glad you're able to be there. You got a very authentic EthDenver experience. It's been that way the whole time. So the very first EthDenver was 2018. I was not at that one, but I was at 2019, 2020. I did it virtually, 2021, and then this year, 2022. So it was my fourth. And they have always had that incredibly collaborative, positive, diverse, embracing vibe. Like, doesn't matter how you show up, doesn't matter where you are in the spectrum, on the sophistication spectrum. There are people who are willing to engage with you. There's folks who are enthusiastic. There's ways to learn. Many of the leading lights in the sector, from Vitalik to Joe Lubin to the sitting governor of the state of Colorado, the Federal Reserve was there. And it really is this sort of meeting of the minds of the space. And it's really hard to articulate sort of how different it feels. I think many people show up at EthDenver expecting sort of a trade show, and it's not. It's something entirely different. And I will say this year's EthDenver was just everything but bigger, right? There were more people, there was more vendors, there were more parties, there were bigger stars at the party. It was longer, there was more going on. And so it very much felt sort of kicked up to the next level. And EthDenver has always been not just about the Ethereum ecosystem and the technology, but also about art, about creativity, about giving back, about teaching. And I think that really came to the fore this year. It was way more prevalent, way more part of the experience. And in this way, EthDenver is starting to feel a little like South by Southwest, where it's sort of this more multicultural spring break-like experience for Ethereum nerds. And the final thing I'll say is this is not crypto. Okay, this is the Ethereum ecosystem. I've been to other events focused on other technologies, and other people have said the same thing. It did not feel the same way. But you go to the ETH Global events, you go to DevCon, you go to ETHCC, you go to this class of event in the past, things like ETH Berlin, and they all have this same vibe. And I think it is very distinct to the Ethereum ecosystem and community, and one of its strongest and most resilient characteristics, and why I am very bullish about the prospects for the ecosystem over the long haul.
Yeah, very well said. It definitely has its own attitude and vibe, and it's completely different from Bitcoin, where a Bitcoin conference, they literally ask you not to talk about other tokens and other technologies. And Ethereum just welcomes everybody. Even competing layer ones like Algorand was a main sponsor of the event, just for an example. So as far as Ethereum in 2022, what are some of the things that you noticed that stuck out that you're really going to keep your eyes on going forward, that maybe you're integrating into Blocknative or you're working with from one of your clients, or just something that you saw at the event and you're like, oh, we better pay attention. This is going to be a big deal for the ecosystem?
So it's interesting. I mean, you got to realize Ethereum's roots are fundamentally an innovation, right? Ethereum came out of the Bitcoin ecosystem because the Bitcoin ecosystem made a bunch of decisions to be technologically conservative, which, by the way, has served that ecosystem very well. And Ethereum was, hey, we want to push the boundaries. And I think that has not, Ethereum continues to push the boundaries. I think what we saw at EthDenver is, one, widespread acknowledgement that the merge is on track and going to happen. So obviously a major upgrade to the network, moving from proof of work to proof of stake, and sort of all the consequences associated with that. Everybody feels pretty comfortable that that's what's going to happen, and the time frame seems to be getting locked in. Two, there's been this big push towards layer twos and side chains, and that seems to be very much sort of a pattern that's locked in. It is not at all clear that there'll be one layer two approach or provider that will sort of win out. It seems likely that there'll be many of them working simultaneously, and that's going to be a fact of life that folks are going to have to deal with. The good news about layer two and sidechain solutions is they increase transaction throughput and they reduce transaction costs. The bad news is they introduce different sets of guarantees and additional complexity based on what set of assumptions you're making. And of course, L2A versus L2B, those may be different characteristics. And so that introduces additional complexity. I think the industry has always been pretty focused on the user experience, but is increasingly focusing on that and sort of how to make it as smooth as possible, whether it relates to wallet experiences and what those look like, whether it relates to sort of core transaction experiences, providing transaction feedback. I think that's a big one that we're going to be paying attention to in 2022. And then, finally, I think the narrative went from sort of ICOs to DeFi to NFTs. And NFTs are still very much front and center, but sort of what's the next thing? And it seems like DAOs are very much sort of that. And so a huge amount of conversation surrounding DAOs and sort of the evolution of what DAOs are, how DAOs can be organized, the capabilities and limitations, infrastructure for DAOs, et cetera. So those are some of the big things that I'm going to be tracking in 2022 and that we at Blocknative are both talking about. We spoke at each one of the EthDenvers we've been a part of and we spoke this year, and then what we're going to be building into this year as well.
I couldn't agree more with the trend of DAOs rising and NFT still being at the forefront. So let's ask about the others as well. Is DeFi as dead as ICOs are now, or is there still a future for that on a mainnet Ethereum?
Oh, so DeFi has never gone away. It's the conversation sort of focus has perhaps moved on, but no, there's still a ton of innovation in DeFi. There's still a ton of value. It's become a lot more competitive. So for a while, DeFi felt like the Wild West and anyone could do anything and anyone could launch a protocol and people who didn't know what they were doing could make crazy returns. It seems like that's settled down a bit. There's still a lot of new stuff happening in DeFi. There's still a lot of innovation there, but that everything seems to be getting a little bit more grounded, if you will, and a little bit more pedestrian, which is probably a good thing when it comes to that category. So still massively outperforming the traditional financial system, still tons of opportunity for creativity, but it's less consuming of the collective consciousness of the ecosystem than it was, during DeFi summer, for instance. But no, I mean, it's still one of the best reasons to participate in the ecosystem and still one of the areas where many of the brightest minds are spending most of their energy.
I use the Blocknative tool all the time to see what Ethereum gas fees are, which really helps me determine if I'm going to do something in DeFi, when the best time is to do it. But in terms of layer twos and some of these side chains and other things going on that have, really grown quite a bit in the past 6 months, is there any layer two that you use personally that sticks out above the rest, either in terms of liquidity or access to bridges, or do you still just prefer to use the main chain with all that it's built on there?
I try to be as experimental as I can be. I'm always trying to check out sort of what's coming and why. We are working fairly closely with specific ecosystems. So we work very closely with Ethereum and the Ethereum Foundation. We also support Bitcoin. We also support Binance Smart Chain, now called BNB Chain, or the Binance Chain, I think. But we also work quite closely with Polygon, and they're doing a ton of really fundamental work sort of in multiple ways, both with side chains and with L2s. And we think there's going to be a lot of positive innovation there. They're among the largest, they're among the most established. And I think you're going to see a lot coming out of the Polygon ecosystem moving forward. We also support Phantom. We also support XDAI, which is now called the Gnosis chain, I believe. And there's going to be additional L1s and L2s that we're announcing support for later this year. Now, what we see is every one of the chains and any one of the L1 and L2s have different trade-offs. And so it's less about which one is better than the other and more about what are the set of trade-offs that people make and what's available there. The nice part about things like Polygon and Binance is they're full smart contract platforms. And so many of the sorts of things you can do in DeFi on Ethereum, you can also do there. And so they're just, they're additional opportunities to deploy trading strategies. They have generally a faster block time, though not always. They generally have quite lower gas prices. So you can do a lot of the things that you would like to do on Ethereum, but sometimes get dissuaded due to transaction fees. You did mention our gas estimator. So if you go to gas.blocknative.com, we have one of the most widely used, if not the most widely used gas estimator for Ethereum. It's also available as a browser extension in Chrome, Brave, and just recently Firefox. And interestingly, the browser extension, you can actually set gas floors and gas ceilings, and you'll get notifications when gas prices fall below a certain amount or when they rise above a certain amount. So your browser can tell you when it might be a good time to do a certain type of transaction that you've been waiting on. So just useful tools out there for folks who are building and active in the ecosystem.
Yeah, well said. We had the pleasure of doing a full podcast not all that long ago where we were talking about the mempool analytics and a lot of other things that you guys were doing over there at Blocknative. So I don't want to go too much over everything we've already discussed, but if you're listening to this and you really like blockchain analytics and excuse me, and figuring out how to get edges and how whales get edges and stuff, you've got to go listen to that podcast at Crypto 101. But what I wanted to ask you about is what are some of the advantages to, I guess, the average consumer to using Ethereum and DeFi and all this stuff versus just trading on Coinbase? Because I'll bet you half the listeners right now, if they've even gotten into crypto, they're probably still using regular Coinbase and they're looking at, a $25 withdrawal fee for Ethereum. They're like, are you kidding me? That's like a quarter of what I spent on this coin. Why would I do that? What are the advantages of really using the DeFi ecosystem in your mind? Is, you look over the world from your beautiful view and you're saying,
So it's a good question. And as not surprisingly, I have many people in my social and personal network who ask, like, how do I get started? I want to get going. Okay. And I always give them the same advice, which is step one, open an exchange account, Coinbase, Kraken, Gemini, there are others. And this will provide the on-ramp for you to convert your fiat dollars out of your bank account into some crypto assets, because you got to get started. You need a gateway in, and these centralized exchanges are the easiest and just probably most secure way to do so here in the United States. So start there. Okay, that's to get going. Then step two, and I always say the same thing, buy BTC and Ethereum alone. Don't buy anything else, okay? And the point is that there's lots of other things that are out there, but start with the two big ones because that's going to get you grounded. You can certainly branch out and do others down the line, but don't gamble. I advise against that. I don't give financial advice. I'm more of a technologist than anything else, but there's many more ways to lose money on some of the smaller cap, more volatile, more speculative assets that are out there over the long haul. By the way, the only rational strategy is to hold long on BTC and ETH, and on a long enough time horizon, technically you should do well. Okay. Now, then what you do once you have your basic holdings is you create a hot wallet, right? And I always describe your Coinbase account or your Kraken or Gemini account. It's like your bank account, right? But you don't carry your bank account in your back pocket. You don't go into a store and buy stuff with your bank account. You need a wallet. So you extract from your centralized exchange account into a personal hot wallet. The most popular and common one out there is MetaMask. It's a browser extension. There are many of them out there of various forms, including Rainbow Wallet, including Pillar, including dozens and dozens of other ones. Now, these are non-custodial wallets. These are things where it's like the cash in your back pocket. You and Lo are in possession of it. You drop your wallet, you leave it behind, you lose your cash, right? You open it in a bad place and someone comes by and swipes your cash, it's gone. There's no one you can talk to. There's no one you can call and say, hey, I lost my cash and get it back. So realize that your bank account has a different set of assumptions around it, a different set of security around it than your personal hot wallet. Now, the good news is only you control your cash. You're the ones who can do whatever you want with it, and no one can tell you what you can or cannot buy, even if you wanted to buy things that some people may find objectionable or maybe even is illegal, right? It's digital cash, right? So it's cash. So the same is true with MetaMask. You can do whatever you want with it. So learning how to deal with a non-custodial wallet where you self-custody is quite an important thing technically, and it's quite different. We often describe there's a lot of anxiety that goes with it because you're not manipulating pointers to money, you're actually manipulating money in value, okay? Then what I recommend is once you've successfully transferred, once you've set up a hot wallet and transferred from your exchange account to your personal hot wallet, is go do some DeFi stuff. Do it on Ethereum generally if gas fees are low. If gas fees are not low, it's better. You'll be able to do more on another chain. Polygon's a pretty good place to start because it's an L2 that gives you a lot of what you need to know. But I have a lot of friends who prefer to go to something like Avalanche or Solana directly just because the fees are lower. Those again have different set of assumptions, different set of issues there, different, you're going to use different wallets on those chains, but it allows you to get going and just get familiar with the mechanic of taking out a lending position or an interest-bearing position, staking funds, getting used to all these basic things. And the whole point of this is don't do it to make money. Do it to learn how this stuff works. Once you learn how it works, there's many opportunities to make money. But if you jump straight to trying to make money before you understand how it works, there's a high likelihood you'll make a mistake. There's a high likelihood things won't work the way that you expect because they're quite a bit different. And you'll wind up in a difficult situation and you'll be out a whole bunch of money and you'll be mad about that. Okay. So whatever you do in this initial phase, this is all learning, right? It's going to take you some time to get up to speed. It's going to take you some time to get going. And I very much encourage folks to be deliberate in doing so. So anyways, a little bit of advice from me there.
I think it's great advice. And I would just tack on, keep your education cheap while, the standard is MetaMask and Ethereum. Maybe use a Phantom wallet in Solana just because the fees right now are a fraction of a penny on Solana versus however many dollars during the day on Ethereum. And it's more or less the same type of experience, but just, if you want to send 10 cents worth of Solana, you can do that for a fraction of a penny. If you mess up, you've hardly lost anything versus you have to send a lot of Ethereum and there's just more at stake there. So once you're ready, do that. But Solana and the Phantom wallet is a really good way to get started cheap and go ahead and make all the mistakes you want there.
Yep. And people generally want to get going and they want the 1,000,000-to-1 return, and you're probably not going to get that on your first crack of the bat. So don't swing for the fences because you're likely to get ripped off. So that hot tip that you heard on YouTube, that crazy viral thing that came out on TikTok is probably a scam, and don't be a sucker. Don't fall for it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you think that person's the one who got all the best advice and they're just giving it away for free on these social media platforms, guess again. They're just selling you their bags. So
yes, exactly. So by the way, you really want to pay attention to what's going on in this world. Crypto Twitter is a pretty good place to get started. Most of crypto Twitter reflects what's happening in Discord servers. Most of what's happening in Discord servers is first discussed in private Telegram and Discord groups. So if you're not in one of those, which you're probably not, you're pretty far down the alpha leak chain, and the chances are that some hot thing that's going to go to the moon is probably just part of a pump and dump scam. So anyways, there's a lot of that out there. It's really unfortunate, and it's always a bummer when someone gets in over their head and they wind up in a bad personal financial situation because they try to do too much too soon. So there are certainly gains to be made out there. It's quite difficult to do, and it requires a lot of time and attention. And if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. I wish I didn't have to say all these things, but you've been around the space long enough, and that is part and parcel of it.
And if it has a name that, it's just scammy in the name, like Safe Moon, for example, run the other way. True. I think that's a great example of what you're talking about. There is such a token called Safe Moon that people really thought they were completely safe to hold, and they were going to add all this value to the token. And it's like, yeah, bullshit. So it's fallen way, 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 way down the charts and will be dead probably by the next summit we have. But people, you got to learn, keep that education cheap. And there's nothing wrong with gambling if you size your bet appropriate. If you have, $100 you're going to put on a craps table and you want to put it in some shit coin instead, well, That's how I got started in crypto, but it was literally just $100. That's all I would put on the table. And I said, this is a bet, this is a gamble, but we would highly encourage you to train yourself in this technology, become an investor in it. And I think that's really where you're going to find the value that changes your life over a long period of time.
Yeah. And I would just say crypto and Web3 is sort of the difference between magazines, AOL, and the internet, right? That you make the leap from something static to something dynamic, but a walled garden. And then you make the leap from something walled garden to something open and without limitation. And of course, the more open and without limitation you get, the more interesting, the more diverse, the more weird, and the more dangerous thing gets at the same time. And so you definitely want to have that experience of going from I'm reading magazines, I think I get it, to I'm going hands-on, this is different, to I'm actually out there and doing it. But along the way, you know, with every bit of upside, there's also downside as well. So anyways, be safe out there and have fun with it. It's a brand new world is dawning, and I encourage everyone to start to get familiar with it because it is the future without question, but it doesn't come without risks. And so just be aware of that.
Well said. And once you are up to speed with becoming a new financial ninja, blocknative.com is the place to go for all of your new weapons and tools to do some amazing things for the real pros out there. And Matt, where can we follow you on Twitter or other socials?
Oh, sure. So my name is Matt Cutler, and I'm generally M Cutler, MCUTLER. So certainly on social, M Cutler, and then we're at Blocknative everywhere. So on social, on Twitter, we're at Blocknative. We have a pretty vibrant Discord community as well. So what we do is sort of everything that happens before a transaction gets confirmed and goes on chain. So there's a lot of really powerful capabilities that Blocknative brings to the ecosystems that we support. And if that's the sort of thing that you're interested to get involved in, check out our website, blocknative.com, and join our Discord community as well. It's a great place to learn. There's a lot of hands-on stuff. We publish a lot of blog posts that explain like why gas prices work the way that they do and why we recommend doing things certain ways, how our estimator works and why it works that way. We talk about hacks that happen when they happen in the mempool, and we just try to give as much educational content as possible so everybody out there can have this same set of information and can be playing on a level playing field, right? We don't like it when there's haves and have-nots, when there's certain people who have an information advantage or edge over others. And we think it's really important that everybody in the ecosystem know what's going on in real time.
And that is what makes you a real superhero in this space. So definitely give them a follow, M Cutler, and we will be back with another great guest in just a moment here at the Digital Currency Summit.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, everybody. Bye.